So Matt, thank you so much for your time this morning. I know how busy you are, and running an office is a big thing. So thank you so much for your time and the chat today, mate. Really appreciate it. So, mate, I just want to introduce and share with people the success that you've had over the last 4 years. You've done amazing things. You've gone from a $500,000 agent to over $1 million agent in that time. You've taken on a team. You've obviously leveraged yourself. You've given yourself incredible sort of work-life balance. You've amalgamated an office to form one of the biggest Ray White offices in Western Australia, and built the rent roll to a really optimal size. So first of all, mate, huge congratulations and well done. You've been an inspiration to me and a lot of our members over the last 4 years. So first of all, well done to that. Now, mate, let's just talk about the last 4 years, because I know you've been in the business about 10 or just over that. Let's talk about those key changes that got you to where you are now.
Yeah, I guess the big changes in steps, I suppose. First one was, I guess, realising that you can't do it by yourself. That's, I think, the first realisation you need to have if you're a bit of a control freak, which then led me, of course, to seeking out you and getting the right advice, I suppose, for a systematic change. Because I guess to me, there was no need to motivate me to work harder. I was already doing that, but certainly that was my problem, working to my capacity. So first step was realising I needed help. Second thing, fortunately, by coincidence more than anything else, was coming across one of your conferences and meeting up with you, and then taking on you as my coach and trainer. And then together working through, I suppose, getting more people in the team to share the load, and then putting together a marketing system that allowed me to leverage my brand more than just me doing the work.
Beautiful. So what it's about, I think it's just gone 4 years, or it might just be coming up to 4 years that we've been working together. So, if you talk about those sliding door moments, imagine if you had woken up that morning and of Homegrown Heroes, that seminar that you attended, and you decided not to attend. Not that you would have, but how different could your life be right now?
I could be still stuck at the same level, I suppose. In fact, to be fair, if I hadn't figured that out, I probably would have given this up by now, because it just is too exhausting doing it by yourself. Especially when bad enough when you don't have necessarily lofty goals, but when you do have a lofty goal and you can't figure out how to get there, there's nothing more frustrating and exhausting than that.
Yeah, well done, mate. That's been awesome. Now, you mentioned a system. Do you want to talk us through that system that you did adopt? And I know, in your own words, I've had to push you off the cliff a few times. So walk us through that.
Well, I guess the system has two halves. One half of it is the right people to be able to do the work. And the second thing is the layers of prospecting that we do to leverage the brand. So the system initially was, and you make a fair point, pushing me off the cliff to hire a few people to help leverage the brand they already had. And there's no doubt that it's a big jump, because these weren't sort of $25,000 a year assistants. The first one was probably, even at the time, over $100,000 a year worth of investment to leverage my time. And I've now got a second person as well who helps me out at not quite the same level, but close. And then we have the multi-layered prospecting system. And again, the biggest thing here is the cost, because if you consider the wage bill I have before I even pay myself at the moment, it's probably close to, I don't know, $250,000, $300,000 a year. And then we have $100,000 a year worth of marketing split over 12 layers to bring the business in.
Yeah, so it's a serious commitment, isn't it, mate?
It really is. People think that you write $1 million a year and you're making $1 million. It's so far from the truth, unfortunately, that you'd be shocked how much is left at the end of it.
But the reality is that you're writing over $1 million. You've got a much better life. Let's talk about that and how you've leveraged not only the marketing, which we'll talk about in a second, but that team, Adrian and Audrey, to really free you up to do those high dollar productive activities and have a better quality of life.
Look, the real key there is splitting the task cleanly. And that's really crucial. If you have a team and you've allocated certain jobs to each person, including yourself, first step, and I think probably the hardest thing for most people, is letting go of control of all those things. And I guess to simplify that, when you're working by yourself, you're handling prospecting, you're handling listing appointments, you're handling getting properties ready to go on the market, you're handling buyer inquiry, you're handling vendor management, and then you're handling the negotiation on both sides at the end to close that deal. Now, that's fine with a small number of properties, but if you think about those tasks I just laid out, there's probably 5 or 6 different jobs in there. So it means that as one person, you're doing 5 or 6 different jobs that require a different part of the brain and certain different skill levels. So the key thing for me was realizing that, okay, I've got to let go of some of these tasks. Unfortunately, the people that I have are excellent and they've been trained up to handle their tasks well. But the most obvious one initially was separating buyers and sellers, because that would be the simplest way of splitting the job in half. So our initial movement was to separate the buyers to one side, and my first PA took that on, and for me to handle the vendor management. And these two things only coming back together right at the very end when the hard negotiation and closing of the deal was required. So through that whole process, I would handle the vendor management, the listing appointments, getting everything ready from that point of view and managing those clients. And I would pass off the job of, I guess, buyer satisfaction, building relationships with buyer to someone else who was probably better at that than I was, because there's no doubt that most people will be better with buyers or sellers. It tends to be a patience thing, I think.
And that's a huge point, because not a lot of agents, I think there's maybe 1% of agents can actually let go of the buyer activity. And I'm glad you've kind of, and I'm going to zoom in here because this is just such an important part for agents out there who aren't able to go to that next level. Tell us those fears of letting go of buyers. How did you take that step?
Well, I think the fear, of course, is that you'll lose control and the person that you hand some of that task over to won't do it as well as you. Let's face it, I think we all think that we're the best at what we do, whether that's true or not. But I think, to be fair, the way that I've done this and choosing the right person to help, I think my vendors get a better result from me spending most of my time with them. And I think the buyers have a better experience spending most of their time with a well-trained buyer manager.
And that's the key, isn't it? If you were doing everything, the buyers wouldn't be getting the service. You may not be able to get back to them.
You couldn't do it.
There's no ways you can give that service. So by actually holding on to that task and holding on to that, those fears of losing them and letting them go. Yes, buyers today, sellers tomorrow, but buyers just want to be dealt with, don't they? They just want to be loved. They want to be taken care of. And us chief listers or us lead agents are not really the right person for that, because we don't have the bloody time to babysit buyers, do we?
Especially when you're busy. I think you can probably handle 1 or 2 sales a month if that's your level, and that's fine. And maybe give both people the same experience.
Yeah.
But again, I think that what your vendors want from you and what your buyer wants from you are two such different things that even operating at that level, you've almost got to turn one side of your brain off and turn the other one on. And often that can happen 3 or 4 times inside of an hour. Whereas by having the jobs separated, one person can have that pure buyer experience focus on. The other person can have that pure vendor experience focus on, which means that both jobs get done better.
Exactly. No, spot on, mate. I'm glad we actually went there. That wasn't sort of, prepared, but that was gold, absolute gold. And I think the commitment is something that people don't realize, but you put the right ingredients in and the right cake comes out. So even though you're spending 100K on marketing, give or take?
Yeah, a bit less now, because I think that the marketing that we did over the last 3 or 4 years has bitten in very hard. It was a huge amount of marketing to get us to where we are. Yes. And now we've pared back a little bit to more of a management level. But once saturation is there, you just keep it rocking on. Yes. But certainly for the first couple of years, it was that sort of investment.
Wow. But and that's kind of got you where you are now. You can pay maintenance. It's more of a maintenance marketing campaign.
That's like with anything. If you keep your bedroom tidy, it doesn't take much work to keep it tidy all the time. If you let your bedroom get into a shambles, it's going to take a long time to get it clean again. Spot on,
mate. Let's change the sort of direction here. Let's talk about COVID, because kind of that's what's going on. We sort of, certainly on an upward swing with regards to COVID at the moment, but the rest of Australia is certainly still, hanging a bit in the doldrums there. So let's talk about COVID. How's it affected you?
I think we've been through 3 stages so far with the COVID. I guess stage 1 was panic. Stage 2 was reacting to new rules every day. And stage 3 was a sense of calm. I think we're in that sense of calm right now. Now, as far as how has that affected us, I mean, from a point of view of business is down probably half or a bit more. So that's a pretty tough thing to take. But at the same time, we haven't given up. So our response to this to date is to be reacting to the best we can inside the rules, but keeping working, because there'll be those of us that pop out the other end of this who have serviced our clients and kept working to the best we can and got some kind of result. And there'll be those who have decided to give it up, and they may well never come back.
Yeah, that's the scary thing, isn't it? And it's probably going to recover quicker than most people actually think, even though we probably yeah. So let's just talk about your study and your opinion on the downturn that's going to come with this. What's your kind of outlook and focus, and how you're going to counterbalance that and sort of get around that, so to speak?
Look, I like to think of myself reasonably well informed, and I make sure that I am as best I can, reading a lot and figuring out, best I can to forecast what's going to happen. I guess the tricky thing is we haven't in our lifetime had anything like this before. I guess the Great Depression was probably the last time the world economy was hit as hard as it is. So we're really guessing, I suppose, but I think you'd be silly not to factor in probably a continual operation level of maybe 50% of what you were doing beforehand. Yeah. And there's going to be a reduction in house prices without a doubt. So I think that you need to be advising vendors before you spend all their money on marketing where we think it's going, so that they're not wasting their time, because nothing's worse than the agent that promises a result without any hope of getting the result. But then at the same time, there are people who will transact in any market. If you're looking to move inside the same market, buying and selling, what a great time to take all the time in the world you want to move inside the same markets. I think that's great. So I think the way we react going forward is we cautiously move ahead. We don't give up. We keep spending a bit of money on marketing. We keep investing in ourselves in that respect. We keep the vendors we do have who do want to sell updated and with the honest information to get them to, I guess, at least get the result that's possible. But at the same time, not promising people things that I think are stupid, which may well happen.
Yeah, you've obviously, had a look at some of the stats that are out at the moment, which I'm pleasantly surprised at and quite optimistic about. Obviously, this is WA, and it does vary across the country. But sales in WA last week were 437, which is up from 286 the week before. I mean, this is current as kind of yesterday. And 12 months ago, there was in this week, 12 months ago, there was only 323 sales in WA. So 53% increase from one week to another, and a huge increase, probably 25% increase on last year's figure. What do you make of that? I mean, that's mind-boggling.
I think my feeling is if you couple that with the listings for sale, as we know, they've just dropped below 12,000 at the moment, which was the lowest level, I think. Well, you're probably better than me. When was the last time we were there? It was probably 10 years ago or longer.
Yeah, it's got to. There might have been a spike there within the last 10 years, but it's got to be a good maybe 2014.
Yes, okay.
2013, 2014, it dropped below the 12 for sure.
So we've got, I guess, a severe lack of stock, which becomes very obvious. Anyone, buyers included, who are looking on the internet right now to buy houses are going to be very aware that there's nothing new to have. There's very little stock there to have. I think we're coupling that with a leftover group of buyers. Let's face it, it feels like forever, but Corona's only been with us for 6 weeks basically. We've got a big stack of leftover buyers who are probably in between homes at the moment and really do want to buy. And I think we're seeing a little bit of panic buying from buyers as they realise there may not be much stock on the market for quite some time. Because one thing that I can tell you on the ground is pretty real is a 10% reduction in values. Even with these buyers, they want to buy, but they're not paying pre-Corona values. So what that'll lead to, of course, is less people putting their properties on the market unless they have to sell. And I sort of feel that Perth, being in a 5-year downturn already, probably the panic selling was done. Now we may see an extended period now of very low stock on the market, and there might be nothing for the buyers to buy from this point onwards.
Yeah, it's an interesting market. I certainly haven't experienced a market where stock levels are low, and there's pretty much a shortage of stock in normal circumstances. Sales are increasing, yet there's a forecast of a global sort of downturn or depression, as the word's been flung about. So it really is quite interesting, and seeing how it's going to unfold. And WA, in particular, a little bit of a protected market because we've got the mines and they've got to push ahead. But very, very interesting. So doing business, just to wrap up, mate, because I don't want to take up too much of your time. Doing business, are you doing things differently now?
There's a lot of things that are new, that were fledgling before the coronavirus bit in, that are now de rigueur, which is things like sort of 3D floor plans, online viewings, appraisals via Zoom, a lot of electronic communication inside offices, sales meetings via Zoom. All these sort of things are now, I think, the new normal. So that we're certainly doing a lot of those things differently. Obviously, at home opens and the like, we were allowed to do home opens this weekend, but even with private inspections, the social distancing is crucial, gloves, hand sanitizer, masks. So we're doing a huge amount of stuff differently, mate, which is going to be here with us for quite a while. But not to forget too, though, that whilst we have all these add-ons that make a difference, real estate's still real estate. You need to find someone who's willing to sell their house and a buyer who's willing to buy the house. And we work the best we can to get those two people to meet in the middle at a price that they'll both agree to. And that hasn't changed.
Exactly. So I mean, it's funny because you and I have been Zooming for a long time. I've been, coaching you. We've been working together, but how long have we been doing coaching via Zoom?
At least 2 years, haven't we?
At least 2 years. So it's second nature to us, and it's funny that has become new for most people, but it's something that you and I have been doing for a long time. And I wouldn't be able to do my job with the amount of people that I do if it weren't for Zoom. So that's interesting. Talking about those critical factors, just last thing, the critical factors being, what should we be looking out for today, or what tips can you give the punters out there, principals, salespeople alike? What should their focus be on right now to get some business done?
I think we've got to double down on our buyer management. And again, any good agency's been working with buyers very strongly for the last 4 or 5 years anyway. We've got to double down on that. Find out who's still there, who really, really, really wants to buy. And then dive back into our database. And rather than just waiting for listings to come on, go and find the property. You should know your area well enough to know the half a dozen or a dozen properties that might suit that buyer. Get out there and go and bang on the door when you're allowed to. Get on the phone. Find out if this person wants to move. I think there'll be a lot of sales done, probably even more so off market than in the past, as people are too scared to come to market fully. But if a buyer were to arrive, it would progress their situation as well.
Spot on, mate. So heavily buyer focused. If you've got the buyers, we all know that in a downturn market, it all goes back to the buyer. There's less buyers and usually less sales, especially if prices are dropping. So you want to be putting your buyers in your pocket and winning rapport with them and buying them coffees and sticking them in your car. Now, I would never say that, but I think sticking buyers in your car is a good investment at the moment. So spot on there, and trolling through your database and finding out who wants to and needs to sell, which is a bit of a catch-22. But you've got a few other strategies that you're using to get inquiry that we've discussed. So ripping price off.
There's been a big switch towards social media and a few things, and then taking no price marketing on the listings we do have, pushing those listings through social, but mostly taking any speed bump or roadblock out of the way to the buyers inquiring. So certainly price, the old adage that if there's no price, the buyers won't inquire is completely wrong, as we well know. A lot of no price marketing we're doing is getting dozens and dozens of inquiries. Yeah. So I think that the main thing is don't put speed bumps like price in the way of a good marketing campaign. Market the house as well as you can. Yes. And then let the buyers give you their opinions on what value is.
Yeah, spot on. Spot on. And last quick thing, mate, I've got to let you go. I know you got to get to an appraisal. What about the types of sellers? What type of sellers are we looking for at the moment?
I think people who are transacting to move to something else. You know, investors are probably going to hold. People to sell out to move and are not going to sell, but there'll be a lot of people transacting to upsize or downsize. They're the kind of buyers you want because they're less affected because they're going to make up on the other side of the transaction.
So just run me through the conversation then that you have with that seller on you know who you're looking for. So how would that conversation go to a point?
I'd call a potential vendor and say, look, Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, just checking in to see what your situation is right now. We do have a big backlog of buyers in our catalogue who are looking to buy, and I understand that not a great time to be selling out of an investment, but if you are considering that maybe an upsize or a move sideways to the beach is something in your life plan, could be no better time than right now to do it.
And would you kind of say that, look, you're probably looking like the market is going to get worse before it gets better? So if you were thinking of selling, like now would be the opportunistic time?
That's a given. There's no doubt the prices are not going to be better than where we are right now, I think, for probably 2 years, if this goes even down the middle road of what people are projecting.
Yeah, interesting. That's great, mate. Matt, thank you so much, mate. Your words of wisdom are always fantastic, and it's been an absolute privilege working with you. And as you know, we're good mates now. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it, and we look forward to catching you at the next one-on-one.
Anytime. Sounds good.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.